It all started, as these things often do, with a map. A very optimistic map, I might add. One that suggested a shortcut across what appeared to be a vast, empty space in South America. This space, I later learned, was a salt flat, an ancient, dried-up lake bed stretching further than my questionable eyesight could manage. I was aiming for a tiny village, rumored to have excellent empanadas. My priorities, as you can see, were perfectly aligned with serious exploration. The sun beat down. My rental car, a vehicle with the structural integrity of a wet paper bag, rattled ominously. I hadn't seen another soul for hours, which, for an introvert like me, was initially quite pleasant. Then the silence was broken. Not by a rogue empanada vendor, sadly, but by a soft, snuffling sound. I peered through the shimmering heat haze. There, standing not 10 feet from my car, was a llama. It was not just any llama. This llama had an air of profound disapproval. It chewed cud with a rhythmic disdain, its large, dark eyes fixed on me. It seemed to be silently judging my choice of vehicle, my questionable navigation skills, and possibly my entire life up to that point. I tried a friendly wave. The llama blinked slowly, unimpressed. It was, I realized, the official welcoming committee to the world of bizarre, salt-encrusted adventures. Soon it wasn't just one llama, oh no. An entire herd emerged from the mirage. They surrounded my car, a fluffy, aloof jury. I was clearly on trial for crimes against sensible travel. They sniffed at my tires, they peered in my windows. One particularly bold individual attempted to eat my side mirror. I figured this was as good a time as any to consult that optimistic map again. Which, of course, offered no advice on llama diplomacy. Now salt, it's that white stuff you absent-mindedly shake on your fries, right? Or use to de-ice your driveway when winter decides to get serious. You probably don't give it much thought. Well, buckle up, because historically speaking, salt was a superstar. A real A-lister in the commodity world. We're talking worth its weight in gold kind of valuable. Sometimes it was gold, or at least the currency used to buy things. Imagine going to the supermarket and paying for your kale with a hefty pinch of Himalayan pink. The checkout queues would be fascinating. Ancient civilizations didn't just like salt, they depended on it. It wasn't just for seasoning their gruel, though I'm sure that was a perk. Salt was the original refrigerator. It preserved food, especially meat and fish, allowing people to survive long winters or travel vast distances without their supplies turning into something unholy. Entire empires were built on the control of salt sources and trade routes. Wars were fought over salty patches of land. People got quite agitated if their salt supply was threatened. Far more agitated than when the Wi-Fi goes down, which is saying something in this modern age. The Romans, clever chaps that they were, even paid their soldiers partly in salt. This was called a salarium argentum, which is where we get the word salary. So, next time you get your paycheck, you can thank a legionary who was probably grumbling about the quality of his salt ration. These salt roads crisscrossed continents from the Via Salaria in Italy to the treacherous trans-Saharan routes in Africa. Camel caravans laden with slabs of precious salt would trek for months under brutal conditions. These weren't leisurely scenic routes, they were arteries of commerce, vital lifelines pumping seasoning and preservative power across the known world. People risked life and limb for this stuff. After becoming intimately acquainted with salt flats and their discerning llama populations, I thought, what next? My brain, clearly addled by excessive sodium and sunshine, decided that deserts were the logical next step. You know, those vast, arid places where everything is roughly the same color, and the primary activity is trying not to become a human raisin. It seemed like a perfectly rational progression, from landscapes defined by too much salt, to landscapes defined by not enough water. My travel agent, had I possessed one, would have likely staged an intervention, or at least suggested a nice beach holiday. The transition is quite something. One minute you're squinting at the blinding white of a salt pan, the next you're surrounded by an ocean of sand, rippling dunes stretching to infinity. The color palette changes from stark white to 1,000 shades of beige, ochre, and terracotta. It's beautiful, in a stark, I could die here very easily kind of way. The silence is different too. On the salt flats, it's a crystalline, brittle silence. In the desert, it's a heavy, watchful silence, as if the sand itself is listening, probably for the sound of your last water bottle dropping. Of course, deserts aren't just empty. That's a common misconception usually held by people who've only seen them in old westerns. They are teeming with life, albeit life that's very good at hiding or only comes out when you're asleep. Cacti stand like stoic, prickly sculptures, Tiny, resilient flowers sometimes burst forth after a rare rain, and the creatures, scorpions, snakes, peculiar beetles that look like they've scuttled out of a science fiction film, all perfectly adapted to an environment that would make most of us wilt in about 15 minutes. It's a masterclass in survival. The challenges naturally are plentiful. There's the heat, an oppressive, relentless force that saps your will to live, or at least your will to move. Section 4: Desert Shenanigans when camels judge your life choices. My adventures in these sandy expanses were, shall we say, memorable. Mostly for the wrong reasons, which always make for better stories. There was the time I tried to ride a camel. It seemed like a quintessential desert experience. The camel, however, had other ideas. It regarded me with the same thinly veiled contempt as that first llama, but with an added air of weary resignation. Like it had seen 1,000 tourists like me, all with the same goofy grin and misplaced confidence. Getting on was an ungainly, flailing affair. Staying on was a battle against physics and the camel's apparent desire to dislodge me at the earliest opportunity. Then there were the navigation mishaps. Armed with a compass that spun like a confused ballerina, and a map that seemed to depict an entirely different desert, I frequently found myself asking locals for directions. This usually involved a lot of pointing, vague hand gestures, and my spectacularly bad attempts at the local dialect. The big rock that looks like a sleeping elephant, just past that, turn left at the dune that whispers secrets. Right, that narrows it down perfectly. I suspect some of them sent me on wild goose chases purely for their own amusement. I can't say I blame them. Quirky facts abound in these places. Did you know some desert beetles collect morning dew on their own backs to drink? Clever little things. Or that certain desert plants can remain dormant for years, waiting for a single rainfall to burst into life? It's a world of extreme adaptation. I once stumbled upon a ghost town in the American Southwest, abandoned when the gold ran out. Eerily silent, with tumbleweeds a-tumbling, it felt like walking onto a movie set. Except the dust was real. And the only actor was me, probably muttering about the lack of a decent coffee shop. One particularly unexpected adventure involved a sandstorm. Section 5. So, what did we learn, besides pack more water? If these travels through salt-encrusted plains and sun-scorched deserts taught me anything, it's that the world is a wonderfully weird place, and that my capacity for making questionable travel decisions is impressively vast. But beyond the obvious lessons like sand gets everywhere and llamas are harsher critics than most art reviewers, there are some deeper takeaways, or at least some slightly less shallow ones. You find a strange sort of beauty in these harsh environments. It's not the pretty, postcard-perfect beauty of a Swiss Alp. It's tougher, more resilient, like a supermodel, who also happens to be a cage fighter. There's a profound sense of humility that comes from standing in a place where nature is so overwhelmingly dominant. Your daily worries, your urgent emails, your existential angst about what to have for dinner. It all seems rather insignificant when faced with a landscape that has existed for millennia, and will exist for millennia after you're gone. It's a good reminder that you're just a tiny, fleeting speck in the grand, dusty scheme of things, a speck that really, really needs a cold drink and perhaps a shower. Or several showers, to be honest. The sand situation can get quite serious. You also develop a new appreciation for the small comforts. A patch of shade after hours in the sun feels like a gift from the gods. A lukewarm bottle of water can taste like the finest champagne. The sight of a paved road after miles of bone-jarring tracks is cause for a minor celebration. These experiences strip away the non-essentials and force you to focus on what truly matters, which in many desert situations is finding more water and avoiding anything that looks venomous. It simplifies things wonderfully. So, would I recommend a jaunt along the old salt roads or a foray into the nearest desert? Absolutely. With caveats, of course. Pack sensibly.